Okay, before making the move out of the city of Chicago to the suburbs, these are 10 factors you need to know. As a reminder, I'm Mike Thornton. I'm a realtor here in the western suburbs of Chicago. If you are considering a move or want more information about what our team does here, our information's in the description below. And if you find this video helpful, please like and subscribe, comment, share with your friends. All right, let's jump right in. So the first factor that impacts your decision to move out of the city of Chicago is the cost of living. So generally speaking, the city is more expensive than the suburbs because you have the convenience of amenities, everything nearby. You have a dense area where you have high costs for HOA fees if you're living in an apartment building or a townhome. You have parking fees to get around the city. So there's incremental fees depending on where you're at. There's also, a very expensive sales tax here in Chicago. And so just moving about your day, whether it's transportation, parking, an HOA fee that comes with the doorman or the pool, things like that, the facilities tend to cost a little bit more. Food and drink honestly costs a little bit more in the city. So you do have a higher cost of living as compared to the suburbs. All right, point number 2, what do you get for your money from a home perspective? Similar to point number 1, because you have those amenities, you are probably getting a smaller space in the city for your money versus the suburbs. In the suburbs, however, for that bigger space, that bigger yard, you don't have access to that pool like you might in your building in the city, or that doorman, or the restaurant that's walking distance away, or having Lake Michigan just around the corner. So it obviously comes with trade-offs, but generally speaking, you are getting more space in the suburbs and you're getting more bang for your buck as far as what you get out of the house and the yard itself. Point number 3 is transportation. So in the city, you have the L, you have the metro that goes in and out from the suburbs back to the city. Everything's very walkable. You have Uber and you have cabs all over the place. So there's nothing more convenient than living in the city, assuming that your daily activities are also in the city. It's very easy and convenient to get around compared to the suburbs, where obviously everything by definition is more spread out. Now the suburbs does have a pretty good infrastructure around the metro system getting in and out of the city. However, the roads and the traffic is very challenging in the Chicagoland area. It's limited how you can get in and out if you want to use your car in the city. So the suburbs is much less convenient, especially if you're trying to live in the suburbs but commute to the city. In my opinion, you're going to want to use the metro system to do that. Driving in and out of the city, especially if there's an accident or weather, construction, it's very inconvenient in my view. So the city life, as far as that goes, is, in my opinion, more convenient. Point number 4 is schools and education. There are some top charter schools in Chicago, but generally speaking, the suburbs have much better schools than the city of Chicago. If that's something that you're tapping into for your family, you will want to consider that. Areas like Naperville, Wheaton, and Glen Ellyn tend to rise to the top of the list. Hinsdale as well, Westmont. There's so many different school districts in the western suburbs of Chicago that ranked at the very top of the list. Naperville this year alone had 3 schools that were National Blue Ribbon awarded schools. So it's hard to compete with that. There's also great private. So if that's a big factor for you, it might lead you to the suburbs over the city. Point number 6 is lifestyle and amenities. I mentioned this several times already. Amenities in the city of Chicago are second to none. Chicago is one of the best cities in the world, especially in the summertime, and you have so many great things at your fingertips, whether it's going to Wrigley Field, or if you're one of the few Sox fans, you also have the ability to go to a game on the south side of Chicago there. You have Lake Michigan right there. You have access to just about anything you could ever think of. There's a great cultural art scene. The food scene in Chicago is incredible as well. So it's hard to compete. I will say the suburbs have quaint towns that are very attractive and have lots to offer as well, but it's just a much different feel. We live out in the Wheaton area, and that city has been built up considerably over the last 5 or 7 years, where you pretty much could not run out of restaurants if you wanted to go out once a week for a date night. You would have plenty of options for long periods of time. And then you also are in such close proximity to other great downtowns like Glen Ellyn, Naperville, Winfield. There's so many things to choose from, but the city is second to none. The amenities are better in my opinion, so you might be sacrificing that if you're moving out to the suburbs. Point number 7 is outdoor space and recreation. This is just depending on what you're looking for. I know many people that hate moving out of the city because they don't have that beautiful run down Lake Michigan. However, if you get out to the suburbs, there are things like the Prairie Path that leads you east and west through towns like Wheaton, Glen Ellyn, West Chicago, which people love. There's biking trails, there's forest preserves, there's way more golf courses if that's your thing. But the city has, of course, a different vibe if you're looking to just run or bike along the lake. That's hard to compete with. But this one I consider a draw. Different strokes for different folks kind of deal. deal. Depending on what you're looking for, you might clearly prefer the suburbs versus the city or vice versa. Point number 8 is sense of community. Obviously, this is what you make it. However, the city tends to be a little bit more transitional. People move to the city from other areas. They are in these jobs that they've maybe are only in for a few years and then moving on, or maybe just they're young people that want to have that sense of, trying out the city life for a little bit. It just is a little bit more transitional. So it's more difficult, in my opinion, to have that sense of community in the city because there's so much turnover compared to the suburbs where people, quote unquote, take roots or, kind of want to build a family and do that type of thing. So in my opinion, it might be a little bit easier to get a sense of community in the suburbs. But again, this is whatever you make it, and you could have that sense of community anywhere. But it is cool out in the suburbs. You have so many different, options to build community, whether it's the local pool or it's the newcomers groups, like the newcomers groups of Glen Ellyn, which is really popular for people moving out to that area. And so I'll give the nod here to the suburbs, but obviously in the city, you can also have a great community. Traffic and parking. So this is a no-brainer. Traffic, honestly, you have probably bad traffic in the suburbs as well. And I mentioned if you're trying to go from the suburbs to the city, that's a disaster. But being in the city itself is very difficult, in my opinion, to get around. Parking is a mess, especially when it snows and the plows pack the snow along the sides of the road. You can get boxed in. It's hard to get your car out. Parking tickets are definitely a thing. And so parking in the suburbs, obviously in most areas, is free and it's much easier to get around. No comparison. If you don't like, trying to find a spot, the suburbs is the place for you. Point number 10 is just the cultural atmosphere, diversity, entertainment, all that good stuff. The city of Chicago is amazing for that. And all these little towns west of the city do a great job as well. But there's nothing like being in the city of Chicago for diversity, for entertainment, arts, all that type of stuff. So even though the suburbs are pretty great, the city is second to none. Give the nod to the city, no doubt about it. Chicago is one of the best places from that perspective. Okay, to summarize, the city of Chicago is definitely where you want to be. If it's about convenience, about not having to get into your car very often, if you already work in the city and maybe you don't have kids yet and don't need that sprawling space, and it's about convenience and entertainment and cultural diversity and all those different things, the city of Chicago, that's the place for you. But if you're expanding your family or you're looking for additional space, you want a yard, you still want that fun downtown area and great restaurants, but you want to spread out a little bit more, want to get a little bit more bang for your buck, that's where the suburbs comes into play. There are so many great ones to choose from. Some popular ones in the western suburbs, especially for people moving out of the city, I would say Elmhurst. It's right there where all the highways converge. It's pretty popular, especially if you're trying to get in and out of the city with your car. And then Downers Grove is also very popular. It's a short 35-minute express train into the city on the Metro. Very popular. A lot of people from the city move out to that community. And then obviously you have the staples like Naperville, Wheaton, Glen Ellyn, also very popular. I'd say a lot of people are also moving further out west, especially if they don't need to commute into the city much at all, into the Fox River areas. Those towns are amazing. Geneva, Batavia's being built up quite a bit, in St. Charles. Don't sleep on those areas. Very popular and great place to hang out. Strong sense of community, good schools, good parks, all that good stuff. Hope this was helpful, and hopefully this helps you in making your decision of whether you're going to move out of the city of Chicago or not. But if you do, reach out to us. We can be a resource.